Hey YouTube, Joeboy here. So, One Piece chapter 1016 is out. If you guys haven't checked out that chapter yet, I suggest that you do so because I will be spoiling you. But now that you have, let's begin. Overall, I think that this was a really solid chapter of One Piece. It's great setup, lead up into most likely bigger events to come, with some things spliced in there that I really liked. But we'll start with the beginning, because I've been on this train for the last 2 weeks, and I've made a point of arguing it every week, and then Oda rewarded me with the beginning of this chapter. Look guys, I really think that the dead are going to come back to life. Not alive, like they're not going to be living, but they're going to appear mostly as ghosts, or spirits, or shadows. I mean, just read the beginning of this chapter and ask yourself, is Oda including this just for shits and giggles? Because if you don't think that, then there's really only one direction it goes. Isn't it beautiful, Otoko? Yep. The Fire Festival is a celebration that honors the dead. We lit this bonfire in the hopes that it would be visible in the heavens. I hope that Daddy can see it. With the sky this clear, I'm certain he can. He is probably watching over us intently, determined to see what becomes of you and the future of this country. I think that this dialogue pretty much straight up suggests that, we've got to know, there's got to be, the next step to this is knowing that Yasu is watching over them. And the only way that I feel like we could know that, even if it might generally be true anyway, is if Yasu makes an appearance. I had a Twitter conversation about this a few weeks ago, and I kind of want to share that with you guys so that I can sort of explain my headcanon around some of this. So, I don't see this as being an Edo Tensei, where all the dead come back to life, and in the way that people sort of negatively look at it and how it ruined the end of Naruto. The reason I think the Edo Tensei in part ruined the end of Naruto is you introduced a bunch of very high tier characters who just took over the story, and took the shine away from all the characters like Shikamaru and Joji and Ino and all these people that we had, were the actual heroes of the story, were replaced at the end by dead guys whose stories were done. And that's very unsatisfying. At first these characters appear and it's hype, but then it slowly dawns on you that all of your favorite characters throughout the story aren't going to do anything, for the most part. So it ends up being a cheap thrill, which ultimately pans out for a worse story. In this case, I don't think that we have that problem, because I think that it is on the singular day, during the Fire Festival, in Onigashima, or the Flower Capital, where you'll have, the way that I like to think about it, is a place where the border between the living and dead is unclear. Rather than take anything away from the story, I actually think that it adds to the story. One of the things that One Piece is known for is world building. Amazing world building, some of the best world building, if not the best world building you'll find in any story, maybe ever. But so what this is for me is more world building, where Oda is adding a dimension to the One Piece world, which has been suggested to exist, but we haven't actually seen yet. And that is the afterworld, or the underworld, or you can call it hell. And it doesn't have quite the negative connotation you might think. On many occasions, Brook has brought it up as an actual place that he has visited. But even as he has said that, I think that there's some doubt as to, does it exist or not, or how does it work? And I think Oda wants to show it. And so obviously, if this does happen, we're speculating, we're being ahead of the curve here. But I want to make this very clear, right, that Buddhist ideals permeate the One Piece story, and Oda is from Japan, which is, predominantly Shinto and or Buddhist. Shinto being the traditional beliefs of the Japanese, the ancient beliefs of the Japanese, and oftentimes it's combined with Buddhism. And so their concept of hell is a little bit different than the Western concept of hell. Fun fact, Enma, also named after a sword that's relevant in the story right now, Enma is the king of hell and judges the souls of the deceased and determines in which world they're reborn, reincarnation. So in these Eastern philosophies, both good souls and bad souls go to hell for a period of time. I'm sure quite a lot of you have also seen Dragon Ball. This is very prevalent in Dragon Ball as well. When Goku dies and he goes to the spirit world, and he has to go up Snake Way, and there's all those little cloud deals, people, dead souls sort of things. And then they have King Yama. Yama is another name for Enma, so that's the general vibe. So the reason I bring up hell specifically is not too many chapters ago, I think it was chapter 1009, it was literally titled, "This is Hell," which is very interesting to me because this is a bit of dialogue which relates to the pre-time skip, whereas in Enies lobby, Luffy is dying fighting Lucci, and Usopp says, "Luffy, this isn't hell." But yet in the fight versus Big Mom and Kaido, Luffy says, "This is hell," which would be a very interesting choice of words on Oda's part if he intends for the border between hell and the world of the living to merge in this one place at this time. This would literally become hell. But I want to point some other things that I noticed about this scene in particular, because I've shared a lot of thoughts about this and I'd rather just do it all at one time. And it won't be now. But I noticed that there's I think that laughter might call the dead in a way. Because Oda made a point of showing the Fire Festival here at the beginning of the chapter, and the vibe of the whole scene is laughter. Everybody is having a great time. And they're also singing, so music as well. Music and laughter calls the dead. The idea of music is actually fascinating and pretty well supported comparatively, even though it is still just a theory, because Brook, who is the dead guy, the guy with the soul powers, is also specialized in music. And also his music seems to have an ability to allow him to hurt souls, which could relate. Also bear in mind, Big Mom, the person with the soul fruit, also has a theme of singing. Also back in Jaya, the Shandians had a belief system, a mythos, that the souls of their ancestors resided within special trees. And so the souls of their ancestors were called to the tree by the sound of the great bell of Shandora, which could be considered music. I also love how Oda uses creatures and animals throughout the story, and I think it's very poignant that the snake, Nola, really loved the sound of the great bell and would always smile and laugh and be happy whenever the bell rang, which is also very similar to Laboon, who loved Brooks and the Rumbar Pirates' music. I think Oda might be using the adage that music moves the soul in multiple ways. I personally think that we're going to find at some point Oda is going to confirm or reveal that the Shandians' mythos is not a mythos, it is in fact how the world of One Piece does work. The sound of the great bell of Shandora and all beautiful music in general calls souls to the world of the living. Or maybe it just simply opens up a pathway for those in hell to observe the world of the living. That works as well. And as an extension of this, I think that Oda interprets laughter and fun as a kind of beautiful music. But obviously, whatever is going to happen in Wano is going to be slightly or significantly different than what normally happens at any other point in the world. So Oda's got to have some sort of unique rationale for why the conditions in the Flower Capital and Onigashima are different. And we kind of just got to wait for that. A part of me wants to justify this as Kaido literally lifting Onigashima, which represents hell, and dropping it on the world of the living, the Flower Capital. But anyway, I don't want to dwell on this for too long because it's still just a theory, although I believe it with all of my heart. But let's move on to the next part of the chapter, which focused on CP0. I just want to remind you guys how ominous all this CP0 stuff is. Think back in the story. When was the last time that a major antagonistic force was sort of just chilling around the island while Luffy and the Straw Hats and their allies fought somebody else? What comes to my mind, unless I've forgotten something, is Thriller Bark. That character that was just chilling was Kuma. And what happened at the end of Thriller Bark? The heroes had to fight Kuma. Sort of. In this case, they were really fortunate that Kuma was more ally than not. In fact, he was just straight up an ally, I guess. But there was still more drama in store for the story. And I wonder, CP0 is not going to turn out to have the same demeanor as Kuma. So this is just another potential example of an escalation of a concept. Oda's taken the same circumstances from Thriller Bark, but at the end maybe, you don't have an ally posing as an enemy. You just have another enemy, one that you cannot deal with. You guys already know that I want the arc to end with some intensity, and I want the Straw Hats to come away from this arc, I suppose, feeling not so confident, or at least having reason to question their confidence. So I guess this is the way that my brain sort of reorganizes this want, in the case that they do actually defeat Kaido and Big Mom. And I am thinking Kaido and Big Mom both go down here. Because in this case, even if they win, they still got another opponent to deal with, and it could end up, again, turning on its head in a moment. But anyway, just to state this once again, my running headcanon has been that Big Mom is not defeated in battle by the Straw Hats. She is defeated emotionally, mentally. There's the things about Big Mom's story will come about that will lead to her defeat. Then she'll become an ally. Then she'll be killed and defeated by somebody else. When it comes to Kaido, I think that the Supernova, Luffy, and everybody are going to bring him down so low, injure him to the point that, maybe they could be considered to have defeated Kaido. And then somebody else steps onto the battlefield and actually does the killing. I think that it's Blackbeard. I think that he might steal Kaido's fruit. But, there's options. But this all still fits with my headcanon. For now. But the actual meat of this chapter focused around Usopp, Nami, and climate-attacked Zeus, aka Cotton Zeus. I'm not entirely sure. So it pretty much was explained the way that I thought that it was going to be explained. Big Mom started to remove Zeus's soul from the storm itself. The soul was kind of loose and could attach anywhere, similar to like Voldemort and Harry in Harry Potter. If you guys remember Harry Potter or you haven't read it, basically Voldemort intended to put a bit of his soul into an object to protect it. And so in order to do this, he had to kill someone. But it backfired, and the bit of Voldemort's soul ended up on Harry's face. For a time, it was just, I guess, sort of loose, hanging around, and found something to cling on to. And so the situation with Zeus seems to be pretty similar, and I really loved this. This went in a totally different direction that I'm just a huge fan of. And so I want to say this right now. I've been holding off mentioning this for a long time, but people wonder, and people have been asking, so is Zeus a permanent upgrade for Nami or not? What happens if Big Mom dies? For instance, does Nami get to keep Zeus? Or is Zeus going to be sucked back into Big Mom? How does this work? Well, on the channel, we've often compared Big Mom's abilities to Gecko Moria's abilities. They're very, very similar. In fact, I would say that Gecko Moria's abilities are probably the lesser version of Big Mom's. And so, when it came to the shadows, which were a reflection of a soul rather than a soul itself, when it came to the shadows, Gecko Moria stated that if he died, the shadows would not return back to their original owners. So it would then follow, since Big Mom's fruit is similar, that if Big Mom died, the bit of the souls that were separated from bodies would not return to their owners. And that would probably include Zeus. And even further than this, I find this interesting, is there is a cover story, which I don't remember the chapter, but it focused on Hydrogen's giant crew. And we see one of the members of the crew, and he has a face on his shield. It looks very similar to a homie. And so the question we have is, was this shield, if it is a homie, and it does look that way to me, was this shield a creation of Big Mom, or was it a creation of Mother Carmel? And so if Mother Carmel created this living shield and then gave it to the giants when she lived in Elbaf, then this shield still lives, even though Mother Carmel has died. But the shield is still interesting, even if it wasn't created by Mother Carmel, because then it would have been created by Big Mom, and so you would get a sense of maybe Big Mom is watching over the giants, keeping track of them, keeping tabs on them, which is also fitting for her character. Another member of Hydrogen's crew, Girth, was Big Mom's childhood giant friend. So there's layers here. And just as an aside, I've said this once, I've said this dozens of times, but I want to bring it up again. Big Mom does not have to go to Elbaf if the Straw Hat Grand Fleet shows up to Wano, because all of Big Mom's plot threads with the giants can be resolved if Big Mom confronts Hyrule and Girth. And I would argue it would be a huge missed opportunity on Oda's part for Big Mom not to encounter Girth. So where is it more likely that the Grand Fleet is going to arrive? Are they going to arrive to Elbaf, or are they going to arrive to Wano? That's how I think about this. So I'll say this again for those in the back. Big Mom does not have to go to Elbaf. She could, but she doesn't have to. But anyway, let's go back to the chapter itself and Zeus. I thought everything that Zeus did in the chapter was insanely cool. It makes Nami so much more powerful, and I just like it. That it's as simple as that. Although the joke about his changing name Cotton totally went over my head. I assumed that maybe there's something in the text here which would make more sense to Japanese readers, but we didn't get a translator note, which is weird. I'm not entirely sure. It's like, oh, I named you Cotton, and then Zeus is like, well, don't like that name. But it was handled in a weird way. I almost felt like we were missing the panel in which Zeus should have said, oh, interesting name choice, and then goes back to calling himself Zeus. Instead, it was really jarring. Like, I name you Cotton, and then Zeus is like, well, I didn't hear you. But this naming moment could be very important and interesting, because if you guys remember how Big Mom's powers work, she then puts the soul into an object, and then she gives it a name, and it comes to life. In this case, Zeus seems to want a new name, but his soul was removed from the cloud and then placed in something else. No one ever named him. Maybe Oda's trying to say something about who Zeus's new master is. Or maybe this is all a red herring, it's fake news. Zeus already had a name, he'd already been brought to life, so he was still under Big Mom's influence. And that'll end up mattering at some point. But before we move on to Ulti, I just want to give a shout out to Usopp. Like, Usopp has come a long way. And what he did in this chapter, I mean, like, MVP, totally. I know that Nami got the hack stick, and so she's power crept, or she's power creeping now, but, Usopp didn't need a wand, and ultimately was the one who made it happen. I've seen a lot of people complain that they didn't like the way that Ulti was defeated, and I gotta say that fight was not a real fight. Like, let's just be honest, Nami did defeat Ulti, but not really. We all know that Big Mom defeated Ulti. Hell, Zeus practically said it in the chapter, that whatever Big Mom did to Ulti really probably messed her up. More so here, this was just an exhibition of what Nami can now do with her climb attack to deal the finishing blow to Ulti. I'm personally okay with that. I can see how people are missing, but I think probably Oda decided that Nami just wasn't strong enough to defeat Ulti by herself yet. So she needed some major assistance. I'm personally okay with that because I'm not quite as invested in fights as I am the story beats and the lore, world building, all these other things matter more to me, but I can see why, if you were looking forward to that, why you'd be disappointed. Overall, I feel like this speaks more towards the trajectory of the fight here coming soon. As it appears to me, if Oda had wanted to, I think he could have had Nami potentially defeat Ulti. Now, how that messes with his own internal power scaling, I don't know, but there is certainly time here to have a more official fight against Ulti without Big Mom first rattling her, and then maybe Zeus is just stupid overpowered, and it takes a few lightning bolts, but Nami does defeat her. So assuming it was possible and Oda maybe didn't decide to do it for time reasons, that he just wanted the Ulti fight to end sooner, it could suggest the fates of the other Flying Six fights as well, that they might soon be over. Jinbei and Who's Who have been fighting for a while. Frankie and Sasaki have been fighting for a while. Black Maria and Robin and Brooke have been fighting for a while. I think that it's incredibly likely that we reach the conclusion of these fights before Luffy returns to the island or the match is set between Yamato and Kaido. That's just my opinion. And also in my opinion, I think that the Straw Hats win all of these fights. I suppose that, as of right now, I'm expecting each of the next chapters to include one of these fights, and maybe even conclusion of it. And so that should concern you. If Oda pretty much off-screens all of these battles, which could have been climactic battles, then it speaks volumes about how he sees the battles in the grand scope of the war. But yeah, if that does end up happening, you best prepare yourself for the community to push back on that, because the fighters, the power scalers are not gonna like that at all. No rationale I could make them like that, but I do see that as a strong possibility at this point. That seems to be the trajectory. Next chapter is, for instance, Sasaki versus Frankie, and then we find out who wins. But we'll see. But the whole backdrop of this chapter related to Tama and was named after her. I was kind of waiting on this. I don't know if I ever said it, but it was sitting in the back of my mind. But if Tama wanted to communicate with all of her smiles, because they've been running around on the dog, right? And just shooting the Kibi Dangos into smile users' mouths. So they're spread out everywhere. If Tama wanted an easy way to communicate with them all at the same time, then through the Marys always made the most sense. This is just another reminder that everything that Oda takes the time to include in the story has a purpose, and now the Marys are really starting to pay off. I thought it was really clever how, in the last chapter, Kaido's trying to destroy the morale of the allies by revealing that Luffy had lost, and then Momonosuke had died, and then it's just all of a sudden, very quickly, in my opinion, turned on its head. And now the morale of the Beast Pirates is falling as Bao Huang is revealing that Beast Pirates' ulti has lost. And just in general, Bao Huang is really distressed while shouting at all of Onigashima. But this isn't just the theme of this chapter. This is something that Oda has been steadily working towards for a very long time. You think back even to the live floor where Queen set the plague, the virus on everybody. Already at that moment, Oda was setting up the morale of the Beast Pirates waning, and thus evening the scales of the wars. The numbers difference is steadily mattering less. The Strats and allies have more to fight for, they have stronger wills, and they're getting lucky, using the Beast Pirates' abilities and weapons against them, including Big Mom. But the way this is all setting up to me, it seems incredibly likely that it starts getting worse eventually. So the numbers difference is steadily getting closer, but we're about to get to another point in time where it's going to appear as though it was a good try, but not enough. And I think that, at least in part when it comes to Tama, that's going to relate to Queen, because I think that Oda hasn't set up and intended for a very long time for the paths of Tama and Queen to cross. Which is interesting because Sanji is fighting Queen. And in this chapter, Oda decided to single out Sanji among all the other Straw Hats, which was curious. It feels likely to me that the Sanji Queen fight is going to find its way to Tama some way, somehow. But yeah, all of this leads to the end of the chapter, and probably the detail that has people the most hyped. I mean, do I even really need to say it? Straw Hat and Odin's brat are already dead. If you're going to play, you should learn to protect your pieces, which is kind of ironic when coming from Kaido. A snot-nosed kid like you throwing off your chains, you think that you can just leave? And Yamato says, that's right, I'm going to sail the seas with Luffy after I drive you out of Wano, Kaido. Look, if Yamato lives, I think Yamato for Straw Hat is going to happen. Again, as just a refresher, as my rolling headcanon for now is that Yamato does join the Straw Hats as a retainer, basically, of Momonosuke. I think Momonosuke joins along with Tama because of Ace's promise to Tama. Luffy then inherits that promise and also brings Tama onto his crew, and then Yamato and Carrot as well as retainers and protectors of Momonosuke, similar to Inuarashi and Nekomamushi for Odin. And then if we continue the parallels between Luffy's crew and Roger's crew, Tama and Momonosuke represent Shanks and Buggy. They're the cabin boys. However, without getting ahead of ourselves, I think that Yamato does join the crew, with the caveat of as long as Yamato lives. There is some potential. The line, the way that it read to me and many other people, has little hints of death flags. So I don't believe that, but I want to point that out because I felt that. But I want to continue reading this because there is a potential double meaning here that I just want to point out, and it relates to what we talked about at the very beginning of this chapter. Kaido says, you have no chance against me. Just accept your fate and become this country's shogun. Yamato says, no way, I already know I'm not gonna beat you. Luffy is the one Kozuki Odin was waiting for. I'm just going to hold you off until he gets back. Of course, most people are going to read this as Yamato saying, I'm just going to hold you off until Luffy gets back, and that may in fact be what Yamato meant. But in author speak, here, Oda, at least the way it's translated here, has left open the possibility of a double meaning. Essentially, Yamato is going to hold Kaido off until Oden gets back. Read it again. Luffy is the one Kozuki Oden was waiting for. Kozuki Oden was waiting for. I'm going to hold you off until Kozuki Oden gets back. Kozuki Oden appears because the person he was waiting for has arrived. You guys know that I think that Oda brings this whole Yamato Oden thing full circle, and Yamato becomes Oden. Yamato is a Yorishiro. She is a person capable of holding a spirit of a kami, or in this case, Oden. So Oden will momentarily possess Yamato, and therefore Yamato will become Oden. But not everybody is going to be possessed by the dead. Yamato is special because Yamato wears the rope around her, very similar to how a Yokozuna sumo wrestler does as well, and the Yokozuna is also considered a Yorishiro, a person housing some great spirit. And so Yamato may not be able to fight against Kaido, Yamato may not be able to defeat Kaido, but Oden stands a much better chance. Oden will not defeat Kaido. I want to make that very clear. It would seem like a very poor narrative choice for Oda to have Oden possessing Yamato's body defeat Kaido. That's the person who's going to do that is going to be a supernova. However, it's obviously going to matter if that happens. So I just wanted to point out that interesting potential double meaning. But yeah, the only other thing about this end that I really want to talk about is Kaido specifically saying that he's been waiting on Wano because Wano is special. Added with the thoughts that we had from the last chapter that Kaido seemed to know more about Joy Boy than I personally expected. It really seems apparent now that Kaido is totally familiar with whatever lore that Oden knew about and was sort of preparing Wano for. Kaido knows the same thing and wanted to be there. Maybe because he knew it would be the place of an epic battle, maybe because he was attempting to play a role similar to Yamato, his child. Yamato wanted to play the role of Oden, and Kaido wanted to play the role of the Oni, the great beast that was foretold to be defeated here. Kaido seems to have a death wish, so maybe he hoped that following the lore, he would be defeated here. I'm just brainstorming. Either way, it's clear as day that Kaido knows a great deal about what has been prophesized or foretold about the events in Wano. He is not coincidentally here. And again, assuming this is all true, or at least partly true, it further demonstrates the genius or the level of thought that sort of went into this, where Yamato and Kaido maybe are playing roles. Kaido has already mentioned another role that needs to be played, Joy Boy, and all of Wano has this subtext of being a kabuki play, and so a play is performed by actors. It's just brilliant if you think about it. But yeah, guys, I thought that this was a good chapter. For me, this was more of like a 8.5 out of 10, but we're building up to something special. I can feel it. Still waiting for the end of the act, if that is even going to happen. It's so unclear. But I'm really enjoying it, and I'm excited for the next chapter. It's unfortunate that we have a break next week. But as always, I'm curious as to what you guys think, whether you know something from the chapter that I might have missed. Share your thoughts. Like the video if you liked the video, dislike the video if you disliked the video, subscribe if you want to be notified for my future content, and as always, guys, have a wonderful day.